Ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be quite fun. And by fun, I mean extremely annoying and terrible. It appears that I have been called out once again, this time by a liberal girl who was so hurt by a discussion we had at Politicon a couple of weeks ago, she decided to make a 10-minute rant video venting about me so she can finally sleep at night once again. We're gonna get to her dreadful monologue shortly, but before we do, first I have to give you guys a little backstory. So sit your fat ass down, get comfy, grab the popcorn. It's story time with Hunter. A couple of weeks ago, I attended Politicon. I had a great time and thankfully didn't get AIDS from simply setting my foot into the liberal wasteland of California. I had a great time meeting some awesome people and some not so awesome people. But overall, I had a blast. While I was walking around the main plaza, just talking to different booths, I came across one table specifically called Final Facts with Alyssa. Now, Alyssa was obviously a liberal, but we had a great discussion. One of the questions we discussed was, is it okay to punch a Nazi? Which Alyssa told me she does think it's okay to punch a Nazi. We had a good conversation, but I warned Alyssa and her boyfriend that if they look up my channel, they are not going to like it. Despite my warning, the next day Alyssa was absolutely furious with me after looking up my channel, just as I predicted. She called me over to her table, where she tried to lecture me on how irresponsible it was for me to, God forbid, make jokes.
And you have an audience of over 500,000, and it is so irresponsible for you to make those jokes.
A joke? You're over here almost in tears over
I'm not in tears. You see me crying right here? I'm
see
just
you getting pretty
passionate.
close.
From that point on, we had a much more heated discussion, most of which was captured on camera. I also want to preface that I am aware this girl has a very small channel, and I was not planning on responding to her at first. I was content to just let her slip into her own irrelevance. But she went ahead and made a 10-minute rant video about me, a lot of which was untrue. So I feel a bit justified in responding. I don't want to turn down a response or a discussion just because someone has a smaller channel. Plus, since me and this girl had also argued and talked in person at Politicon, I feel like responding is fair game. Well, now you know the full backstory, so why don't we get into this weaponized autism?
So it wasn't just Tommy this weekend. As far as getting to confront some people on the right, I actually had the opposite of pleasure of meeting Hunter Avalon. For those of you who are not familiar with Hunter, he is again a YouTuber troll, pretty much. Before I had met him, I had stepped away from my table and he actually met my boyfriend first and admitted to my boyfriend that he wasn't a reporter, he wasn't a journalist, he was a troll and was total, like it was all a joke, that he's not reporting on facts or truth, even though like his whole base seems to think like he's so factual and he's got all the evidence to take down the libtards, quote unquote.
Well, this is completely untrue. Now, obviously, none of you were there to see who said what, so I don't want to get too deep into this whole he said, she said nonsense. I did tell the boyfriend I was not a journalist, because I'm not, and I did mention I can be a troll sometimes. However, I never once said it was all a joke or that I was not reporting on facts. That can be so easily disproven by watching any of my videos where I always use articles, facts, and statistics to back up what I'm saying. Even in the original discussion me and this girl had, I was referencing articles and statistics. There is certainly a level of fun and entertainment in trolling the easily offended left. But if I also didn't have a set of values or facts to back up my reasoning for trolling, I'd be a complete poser. This girl is taking a very small bit of a conversation I had with her boyfriend and conflating it into something much bigger and blatantly untrue.
Hunter was extremely upset at the fact that so what I had on my table was a spin the wheel, and on this spin the wheel you could basically spin it and whatever it landed on, it was like a debate question or topic. You know, there was like 10 questions, but one of the questions on there was, is it okay to punch a Nazi? And as I explained to Hunter several times that when I use the term Nazi, I mean the definition of a Nazi, like people who are advocating for a genocide in a white ethno state. Yes, I do recognize that there are some people, very few, very few, I think it's exaggerated, but there are some people on the left who do use that as a blanket term to mean anybody they disagree with, but that is not what I meant. And when I said, is it okay to punch a Nazi, I'm only advocating for that type of violence if this guy is out there advocating for genocide and stuff like that. Like like a literal Nazi.
Well, at least she admits to advocating for political violence, so there's a start. Alyssa, you realize by your own logic, you're advocating for violence against Nazis, so technically Nazis are justified in punching you. But seriously, let's go through this. Alyssa, what I was originally trying to explain during our Politicon debate was that the idea that it's okay to punch a Nazi is a dangerous one. Why? Because who's to say you won't label someone who's not a Nazi as a Nazi, then have justification in beating the crap out of them? You also claim that only a small amount of liberals do this, but sadly, you are mistaken. It's a lot more than just random, irrelevant liberals calling people they don't agree with Nazis. The media perpetuates this deranged idea as well. A journalist recently compared Ben Shapiro to a Nazi collaborator. Should we punch Ben Shapiro? According to the Washington Post, we shouldn't compare Trump to Hitler because it belittles Hitler. Should we punch Donald Trump? Back in June, an MSNBC commentator labeled every Trump supporter as a Nazi. Well, maybe now we can punch Trump supporters. You claim you only advocate for violence when it's an actual Nazi, but what gives you the authority to decide who's an actual Nazi to begin with? I mean, if you ask me, the lines already seem extremely blurred. Finally, you claim you only advocate for violence against others who advocate for genocide or an ethno-state. Advocating for something, no matter how disgusting that thing may be, is still freedom of speech. It is not clear and present danger, and meeting words with physical violence is unwarranted. Trust me, there are far better ways to defeat bad ideas. Punching people is not one of them.
And so I want to play a clip. This is a little bit about the dialogue that Hunter and I had about that.
That's why open dialogue and open speech and having conversations about these
I'm
things
down
are so
for it, but
important.
that is my line. White ethno-state, genocide, if you are advocating
Yeah,
for those things,
those
that's my
are-
line. I can't believe this is controversial.
It's-
That is my line.
I'm not saying it's controversial. That should be I think most level-headed people, that is their line.
But
Most
yes-
level-headed people do agree that that's but also that maybe physically assaulting people you disagree with, even if their ideas are shit, is not the best approach.
So if you guys haven't seen his videos, I don't want to encourage you to because I don't want to give him the views. They're awful and the content is absolutely baseless and absolutely false and just buying into a terribly hateful and dangerous agenda.
Are you planning on offering any proof of what the dangerous and hateful agenda is that I'm buying into? I hate to sound like Mike Pence, but this is probably going to come as a shock to you. You are not an authority on all things politics.
But he has video after video after video making fun of transgenders.
Oh my word. Did you just refer to transgender people as transgenders? That is so incredibly derogatory and politically incorrect. I'm sorry, but you may need to issue an apology immediately. How could you be so disrespectful to transgender people? How could you be so disrespectful to Michelle Obama?
Making jabs at the LGBTQ plus community. And, and I told him, if you find that me asking this question is dangerous, okay, fine, but you have to at least admit that your rhetoric is dangerous because it dehumanizes the LGBTQ plus community and individuals.
To try and compare my jokes to your advocacy for violence is quite the stretch. First of all, this seems just a little bit hypocritical. I mean, if you believe transgender people are normal equals in our society, why do you also treat them like a protected group who can't have jokes made about them? Why is a crack about a white guy okay, but a joke about a transgender person is off limits? Do you not see transgender people as equals? Secondly, in order for my joke about, say, a trans person getting beat up to have its desired shocking effect on the audience, I must first hold the belief that hurting a trans person is wrong to begin with. How else would a joke about such a thing be considered shocking? Plus, jokes don't dehumanize anyone. Is every edgy joke in a Hollywood movie dehumanizing someone? Of course not. Not to mention, if we stop nitpicking my obvious jokes and look at my actual beliefs, despite my jokes, it's obvious that I view trans people as human beings. Videos I've made years ago support the idea that trans people deserve rights. I make jokes about a lot of different people and groups. It's ludicrous to conflate joking about someone to dehumanizing someone.
I just have to say to Hunter and anybody else that if that's what's funny to you and this shock humor, that's your comedy. I've done stand-up comedy and you're not funny. Like, that's all it is to it. You're just not funny. I'm sorry. There's a small crowd of people that think you're funny, but you're not.
Well, what do you know, everybody? Apparently, we're dealing with an expert on Nazis, politics, and now comedy. What is this sorcery? Alyssa, this was quite possibly the worst avenue to take right here. You simply cannot speak as an authority on comedy. Comedy is far too abstract and subjective for you to try and act as an authority on the subject. Now sure, you can have a personal opinion that I'm not funny. I've said people like Amy Schumer aren't funny myself. But when you try and claim, you did stand up and I'm not funny, as if you're an authority on humor, it's not a good idea. Word of advice, you may want to get off your high horse. I think you have a real arrogance issue.
But I don't believe necessarily that he hates gay people. I just think he doesn't understand that there are real individuals that have a hate and that discriminate against the LGBTQ plus community, and that when they see videos like what Hunter puts out in his content, it reaffirms their beliefs and it could very well encourage them and incite violence.
This is a major slippery slope fallacy and once again is easily debunked. First of all, if I make a joke about the LGBT community, then some crazy person commits an act of violence against the LGBT community, yes, that's terrible, but I am by no means responsible for the actions of that crazy person unless I specifically called for violence against the LGBT community, which I have never done. In fact, I've done the opposite. I'm fully aware that there are people who hate gay people and want to discriminate against them. Have you ever heard of this little thing called Islam? I've made multiple, serious, researched, in-depth videos where I discuss the horrors the LGBT community experiences at the hands of Muslims in Islamic countries. I've spoken out against this violence and I've raised awareness of this violence to hundreds of thousands of viewers through multiple different videos. So while you sit there and try and lecture me, try and paint me as some violence-inciting monster, I've actually done more for the LGBT community than you ever have.
I can't believe that you can recognize this and understand the power of language. You've got over 500,000.
I
I've only got like
understand
1,500 subscribers. I don't got an audience like this. It is your responsibility to put out what's right, to put out like...
Thanks, Mom.
I just don't understand
You
how
know
you...
what?
No, hey, let me
Here's
say,
the thing.
again, I don't understand how you can say that this is dangerous. But then again, you guys, watch his videos. He was literally making fun of the LGBT community. Like,
I make jokes. I'm a half
we were watching
comedian.
last night,
I make
like,
a joke.
I wish I could have asked Hunter what his thoughts were on World War II, because like if he was around back then, I mean, he must have been saying the same stuff, like when America was going to get involved with Germany and Nazis and everything like that. I mean, I wonder if he would have been like, nah, we shouldn't assault them though, you guys, because if we assault them, then, people are going to be like, what are you doing assaulting them? They're just trying to do what they want to do.
America was going to war with a country that was currently committing mass genocide. Violence within the context of war was necessary. However, there is no mass genocide going on in America that warrants violence. Even if someone is advocating for genocide, it is not the same as attempting to commit genocide. There's a really big difference between verbal advocacy and human rights violations. It absolutely is a human right to have the freedom to speak your ideas, no matter how vile your ideas may be. If you commit actions that limit free speech, that creates a culture far more dangerous than a culture where ideas go head to head, with the only judge of victory being the logic and articulation behind them.
I just think it's funny that, it's only okay for violence when it's like white males, and stuff like that. But when it's minority groups like trying to defend themselves and their lives and their rights, then it's like, we can't be violent. You guys are just...
Is this chick off her meds again? You are creating a straw man by 1, claiming it's only okay when white males commit violence, and 2, that minorities' rights or lives are somehow threatened by speech or ideas. First of all, no one is saying violence is only okay when white males do it. I have no idea where you're getting that from, and honestly, you sound like an insincere leftist mouthpiece. Secondly, just if someone holds a belief that, for example, black people don't deserve rights, they are not violating anyone's rights or lives unless they begin to act on those ideas. So if a man runs at a trans person, wielding a knife and screaming, "I hate trans people," that that would absolutely be justification to defend yourself. A better question would be, why do you apply this logic? That it's okay to punch someone advocating for your death, or for your rights to be revoked, only to minority groups. I get a lot of hate comments, some of which call for my death. Am I justified in punching those people? No, of course not, because words do not violate anyone's rights. However, the minute words become actions, that person would be a criminal and they'd be charged with a hate crime.
You guys are just as bad as the Nazis. Yes, the people who are only being violent because they're trying to save their own lives are just as bad as the people who are being violent to take those lives away. Okay.
Alyssa, earlier you created the scenario in which the actual Nazi was advocating for genocide or an ethnostate. Your words exactly. Now you're claiming the minority is being violent to defend their life from someone else who's being violent to take their life away? If we stay true to the scenario which you created, advocacy, speech is not violence. Creating a culture violating the right to and protection of free speech more resembles actual Nazism than just the individual verbal advocacy.
Because Hunter was very adamant about how he wasn't racist and how he totally understood that police brutality was an issue, yet he could then say stuff like this.
Simply being afraid does not always equal justification for being afraid. Just if someone feels afraid does not mean they're justified in feeling afraid. If I go out and I say, oh, I'm really scared to walk around LA, I'm really scared, I'm terrified of LA, that's not really an argument that LA is dangerous. Now, if we actually want to look at some statistics, back in 2015, there's a black Harvard professor. He did conduct this study, I believe it was in Houston and possibly a few other cities, but I believe the big one took place in Houston. He found that the chances that a black man has versus a white man of dying to the police are equal. Now, black people do have a higher chance of being, roughed up by cops. Some of this is also because, we have to look at the facts here is that, black people are more likely to resist arrest, like statistically.
Oh my
We
god.
really,
Oh my
we
god.
really gonna
This is
take
his page.
it
This
here.
is his
We really
page.
gonna take
I'm
it
not
here.
Yeah, right? Pretty crazy, I know.
Girl, the only thing that's crazy is you. I mean, look at yourself. You're jumping up and down like a tantrum-throwing child. Also, I love how you show clips of me using legitimate facts to somehow paint me as a racist. Facts can't be racist, and your attempt at calling me racist is really unoriginal.
I don't know how Hunter could have posted this on his channel and say that he wrecked me in SJW when I was straight up. I was passionate, you guys. I was never crying. I was never like that.
She's so hurt.
I was there standing my ground, but I guess that's him wrecking me. So, you guys be the judge of that. And yeah.
Yeah. There's my response and stuff like that. But seriously, here we have another poor lost soul blinded by the mental illness of liberalism. Political violence is not okay. Violence is only justified when it's clear and present danger and self-defense. You never need to physically defend yourself from ideas, no matter how terrible those ideas might be. Thanks everyone for watching. Please give this video a like, comment below, and subscribe to my channel. I'll see you all soon. Peace.